Oh, hello. I have two in English. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. What's this one? This one. It's gonna be this one. Then three. So this one first.
Australian law is clear. Criticism of Israel does not breach the Racial Discrimination Act. Earlier this month, the federal court found controversial Muslim cleric Wissam Haddad breached the Racial Discrimination Act. Justice Angus Stewart ruled a series of speeches Haddad posted online were fundamentally racist and anti-Semitic and profoundly offensive towards Jewish people in Australia. However, the court also ruled criticism of Israel, Zionism and the Israel Defense Forces are not anti-Semitic and therefore do not breach the law. This finding could help inform the current debate on how to define antisemitism in Australia. Antisemitism in the law. Haddad's sermons were found to include perverse generalizations about Jewish Australians made at a time of heightened vulnerability following the October 7, 2023 attacks on Israel by Hamas. The court's decision is based on provisions in the Racial Discrimination Act. The act applies equally to all racial and ethnic groups in Australia. It does not refer directly to antisemitism, nor does it prohibit it specifically. But Jewish people have been recognized as a distinct ethnic group protected by the act since 2002. As such, several successful court cases have been brought by Australian Jews under the laws. To breach the act, speech must be likely to offend, insult, humiliate or intimidate a reasonable member of the target group, in this case, Jewish people in Australia. Trivial or minor harms do not meet this standard. Also, the speech must have been done because of the race or ethnicity of the target group. This means the race or ethnicity of the person or group must be one of the reasons for the speech. The law protects against racial discrimination, which includes ethnicity. It does not prohibit religious discrimination. However, for Jews, Sikhs and other ethno-religious groups there is some overlap. There is no liability under the Racial Discrimination Act if the speech was done, reasonably and in good faith, for a genuine purpose in the public interest. This is the free speech defense. Other breaches of the RDA. In 2002, the federal court found the act was breached by a website that denied the extent and existence of the Jewish Holocaust. The website's creator, Frederick Tobin, claimed the content was true and its publication was in the public interest. However, the language used by Tobin was deliberately provocative. His clear intention to offend Jewish people meant no defense was available. In September 2023, Australian law is clear. Criticism of Israel does not breach the Racial Discrimination Act. Earlier this month, the federal court found controversial Muslim cleric Wissam Haddad breached the Racial Discrimination Act. Justice Angus Stewart ruled a series of speeches Haddad posted online were fundamentally racist and anti-Semitic and profoundly offensive towards Jewish people in Australia. However, the court also ruled criticism of Israel, Zionism and the Israel Defense Forces are not anti-Semitic and therefore do not breach the law. This finding could help inform the current debate on how to define antisemitism in Australia. Antisemitism in the law. Haddad's sermons were found to include perverse generalizations about Jewish Australians made at a time of heightened vulnerability following the October 7, 2023 attacks on Israel by Hamas. The court's decision is based on provisions in the Racial Discrimination Act. The act applies equally to all racial and ethnic groups in Australia. It does not refer directly to antisemitism, nor does it prohibit it specifically. But Jewish people have been recognized as a distinct ethnic group protected by the act since 2002. As such, several successful court cases have been brought by Australian Jews under the laws. To breach the act, speech must be likely to offend, insult, humiliate or intimidate a reasonable member of the target group, in this case, Jewish people in Australia. Trivial or minor harms do not meet this standard. Also, the speech must have been done because of the race or ethnicity of the target group. This means the race or ethnicity of the person or group must be one of the reasons for the speech. The law protects against racial discrimination, which includes ethnicity. It does not prohibit religious discrimination. However, for Jews, Sikhs and other ethno-religious groups there is some overlap. There is no liability under the Racial Discrimination Act if the speech was done, reasonably and in good faith, for a genuine purpose in the public interest. This is the free speech defense. Other breaches of the RDA. In 2002, the federal court found the act was breached by a website that denied the extent and existence of the Jewish Holocaust. The website's creator, Frederick Tobin, claimed the content was true and its publication was in the public interest. However, the language used by Tobin was deliberately provocative. His clear intention to offend Jewish people meant no defense was available. In September 2023, a Melbourne secondary college breached the act by allowing Jewish students to be systematically bullied and harassed, including through the use of racial epithets and Nazi swastikas. The court took into account the intergenerational trauma experienced by students whose families were affected by the Holocaust. The school was ordered to pay compensation to the students totaling more than $400,000. Criticism of Israel does not breach the law. Crucially, in the recent Haddad decision, the court stated, it is not anti-Semitic to criticize Israel. Parts of a speech made by Haddad that referred directly to the conduct of Israel and the Israel Defense Forces did not breach the Racial Discrimination Act. because they could not reasonably be regarded as referring to Jewish people. Further, references in the speech to Zionism were regarded by the court as referring to a political ideology rather than Jewish ethnicity. However, the court did recognize that criticism of Zionism in Israel was sometimes coded or included subtle references to Jewish identity. Under the Act, courts must carefully consider the context of relevant speech, including the tone and language used. That means blaming Jewish people for the actions of Israel or the Israeli military, for example, could in fact breach the law. Antisemitism definition. The federal court's decision in the Haddad case preceded the proposed antisemitism strategy by Gillian Siegel, the government's special envoy on combating hatred against Jewish people. Her report recommends the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's definition of antisemitism embedded in all public institutions. The definition is controversial because it appears to conflate criticism of Israel with racial and ethnic prejudice. Concerns have been raised legitimate criticism of Israel and its government would be stifled if the definition was widely embraced. A version of the definition was adopted in February by Universities Australia, the governing body for Australian universities. Some universities have rejected the definition on the grounds it may restrict legitimate academic freedom on campus. No defense available to Haddad. Haddad argued his speeches were justified because they were based on Islamic scriptures. However, after weighing up expert evidence, the court found denigrating Jewish people was not supported by scripture. The speeches were not made, reasonably and in good faith, given Haddad had used inflammatory language. He further courted controversy by also maligning Christians and Hindus. As the speeches were no more than bigoted polemic, no conflict between religious freedom and the Racial Discrimination Act arose. In summary, Haddad breached the act by making profoundly offensive speeches regarding Jewish people in Australia. The court ordered the sermons be removed from social media, while Haddad was ordered not to repeat them. The decision clarifies that anti-Semitic speech is prohibited by the discrimination laws, although criticism of Israel is not.
There you go. So they're going to keep protesting about anti-Semitic or whatever the word was, anti-Semitis. Anti-Semitis. Alternative. Anti-Semitic alternative. Yeah, right. Anti-Semitis. You go Australia. And what's this one?
Anti-Semitism plan fails on a number of fronts. A contentious definition of hate is just the start. The anti-Semitism strategy presented to the Albanese government has attracted considerable and Holly justified criticism. Produced by Gillian Siegel, the special envoy to combat anti-Semitism, the blueprint falls short in a range of areas essential to good public policy. This is due to its biased arguments, weak evidence and
Alright, on the news, some guy tried to burn the door of a mosque of a little building. It was a pretty tough little building and tough doors, and he tried to burn it. I don't know what's going on. There's people with masks and crazy people doing crazy things.
recommendation overreach. There is also the adoption of a contentious definition of anti-Semitism which has been criticized for conflating disapproval of Israel with anti-Jewish.
And also they put the mask on it, put the knife in your throat, and say, we don't like Israel, hate for Israel.
Jewish prejudice. Alternative definition. The strategy uses the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's definition of anti-Semitism, manifestations of which could include criticizing the state of Israel. However, this definition is contentious, so much so that its original author, Kenneth Stern, has rejected it as a tool for regulating anti-Semitism due to its potential to be weaponized to silence free speech. Other widely used definitions are unacknowledged in the report. These include the Jerusalem Declaration, which attempts to strike a better balance between anti-Semitism and freedom of speech, including criticism of Israel and Zionism. As the declaration notes, hostility to Israel could be an expression of an anti-Semitic animus, or it could be a reaction to a human rights violation.
Oh, see what they just said? How can you rewind? Play.
Violation. Or it could be the emotion that a Palestinian person feels on account of their experience at the hostility to Israel could be an expression which attempts to strike a better balance between anti-Semitism and freedom of speech, including criticism of Israel and Zionism. As the declaration notes, hostility to Israel could be an expression of an anti-Semitic animus, or it could be a reaction to a human rights violation. Or it could be the emotion that a Palestinian person feels on account of their experience at the hands of the state. Biased argument. The report presents a clear and consistent argument. Antisemitism has been on the rise in Australia, especially since the Hamas attacks in October 2023. It is particularly obvious in universities and cultural institutions. Antisemitism is an insidious form of prejudice and hatred which is destructive not only to the Jewish community, but to the very fabric of Australian society. It requires a community-wide response to stamp it out. The report is underpinned by Segal's principled aspiration to ensure all Australians, including Jewish Australians, can live with dignity, fairness, safety and mutual respect. But there are multiple problems with how this argument is presented. First, it is sweeping in its application. A good example is the claim antisemitism has become ingrained and normalized within academia and the cultural space. No explanation is given to what these terms mean, or what these practices entail. Without such qualifiers, readers could easily be misguided in thinking the problem is more pronounced than it actually is. Weak evidence. The report provides alarming statistics about the rise in reported cases of antisemitism in Australia, including a claimed 316% spike in the 12 months to October 2024. It pays particular attention to antisemitism in the university sector, quoting a survey by the Australasian Union of Jewish Students, which noted more than 60% of Jewish students who experienced antisemitism felt unsupported by their institutions. No doubt there has been a surge in anti-Semitic hatred, but there are significant problems with how evidence for it is presented in the report. Segal fails to produce a single citation, which makes it impossible to access the data and assess its veracity.
So, because of Israel bombing Palestinian, there's going to be antisemitism, whatever. Bad protest, bad people with masks. Kill ya.
Veracity. Baseline figures, details about who collated the data, the investigation of incidents and their resolution, are all missing. The report also misquotes an important source. It states, in February 2025, ASIO Director General Mike Burgess declared antisemitism as Australia's leading threat to life. In fact, what Burgess actually said was, in terms of threats to life, it's my agency's #1 priority because of the weight of incidents we're seeing play out in this country. There are subtle yet important differences in these two statements, which need to be carefully parsed when dealing with such a serious issue. Gaza ignored. Also problematic is the singular focus on extremist ideologies as the reason for the rise in antisemitism. In doing so, the strategy omits a compelling fact. The recent upsurge is likely linked to Israel's war on Gaza, which has resulted in mass Palestinian civilian casualties over the past 20 months. As international law expert Ben Saul argues, people did not just inexplicably and without context decide to become more anti-Semitic in that period. It was fueled by fury at Israel's profound violations of international law in Gaza. Furthermore, while Segal claims to be focused on mutual respect, she fails to acknowledge other groups that face similar forms of racism and discrimination, including Australia's Indigenous peoples and Islamic communities. In doing so, the report appears to be seeking special treatment for the Australian Jewish community. Recommendation overreach. Much of the negative reaction to the report has rightly been focused on its far-reaching punitive recommendations, which have been described as Trumpian. Many are directed towards the education sector, including threatened cuts to school and university funding, and extending the capacity to terminate staff who engage in anti-Semitic behaviors. Segal envisages creating a university report card to adjudicate on universities that are failing the standard, presumably set against her preferred anti-Semitism definition. The media and the cultural sector more broadly are also in Segal's headlights, with recommendations to establish herself as a media monitor to ensure fair and balanced reporting. Charitable institutions deemed to be supporting anti-Semitism would lose their tax deduction status. These highly controversial measures are in overreach of the envoy's terms of reference. Segal's mandate specifies her role as an advisor to government, not a regulator. By taking such a drastic approach, the anti-Semitism strategy risks stoking further social division. The government, which is considering the recommendations, must proceed very cautiously. View from the Hill. Segal's anti-Semitism plan gives government controversy, not clarity. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese may be ruining what seemed a good idea at the time, the appointment of a special envoy to combat anti-Semitism as well as an envoy to combat Islamophobia. Or perhaps Gillian Segal, a former president of the Executive Council of Australian Jewry, was the wrong choice for the position, despite her extensive legal, business and organizational background. Her plan to combat anti-Semitism, released on Thursday, has stirred controversy. Now Segal has had to distance herself from a $50,000 donation from a trust controlled by her husband, John Roth, and his brother, made to the right-wing group Advance. No one would tolerate or accept my husband dictating my politics, and I certainly won't dictate his. I have had no involvement in his donations, nor will I, Segal said, after embarrassing revelations about the money. When Segal presented her strategy last week, it was applauded by many in the Jewish community. But critics find it disappointing. It is simultaneously too thin, even accepting it as a plan rather than a fully fledged, comprehensive report, and overblown in its recommendations. The wave of antisemitism we've seen in Australia since October 2023 has been both shocking and appalling. Many politicians and institutions, including some universities, have handled the situation badly. Documenting in some detail what happened is important as part of any blueprint for the future. So it is surprising the Siegel report does not provide more of a record. It would have been useful to have a list of the major attacks, rates of apprehension, prosecution and conviction, and what's known about perpetrators and motivations, including criminals using antisemitism to get leverage for personal advantage. On strategy, by contrast, the Envoy's report goes for broke. Among her most controversial recommendations are removing funding from universities and cultural institutions that fail to deal effectively with antisemitism. Siegel has since stressed this as a last resort. Siegel proposes to prepare a scorecard assessing universities' performances. She says if systematic problems remain by the start of next year, the federal government should appoint a judicial inquiry into campus antisemitism. There is no prospect of the government adopting the tougher proposals among the Siegel recommendations. Albanese and Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke were at the plan's launch. It would have looked bad for them not to be. But it was notable Albanese made no commitment on adopting the recommendations. Burke told the ABC on Monday night, "I think the objective here is not to be stripping funding from universities, it's not to be canceling people. The objective is actually to never fall foul of the need to make sure that we're combating antisemitism." On university defunding, Segal's plan is simply impractical. What exactly would be the benchmarks of failure? How much funding would be withheld? With more egregious issues, such as encampments on campuses, having been dealt with, navigating around the issues of free speech would be tricky at best. The challenges of arts funding would be even more problematic, given the license in artistic expression. One problem with Segal's report is that she inserts herself too personally into what she believes should be done. For instance, she says in her foreword, the pages that follow outline how the envoy will address antisemitism across education, law, digital spaces and community life. And later, the envoy will work with government to enable government funding to be withheld from errant universities and academics. Under Segal's plan, she will monitor media organizations, which means the ABC and SBS, to encourage accurate, fair, responsible reporting and assist them to meet their editorial standards and commitments to impartiality and balance and to avoid accepting false or distorted narratives. At first glance, that might sound reasonable, but it could risk descending into harassment. The Ladoff affair was an example of the ABC giving into lobbying from pro-Israel complainants and ending up losing an unfair dismissal case. When pressed about what criticisms she had of the ABC, Siegel initially said she didn't have anything in particular in mind. Later, she produced an example. She didn't sound well prepared. Some narratives are black and white, others are gray, and the grays can come in many shades. People of goodwill, within the media and outside, will have a range of views on Middle East issues. Balance and impartiality will involve judgments, let alone the difficulties of being sure about accuracy. Segal's report refers to the fact that, according to research she commissioned, younger people, those under 35, have different perceptions on the Middle East and the Jewish community than older people. Siegel emphasizes the importance of educational effort in combating antisemitism, which comes down to issues of teaching history and promoting tolerance. Again, there are areas of absolute clarity, the details and evils of the Holocaust and the broader history of antisemitism, and contested areas, various issues in and about the Middle East. Segal's call for the wider adoption of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of antisemitism has brought some blowback. This defines antisemitism as a certain perception of Jews, which may be expressed as hatred toward Jews, including through words or physical actions. This definition is controversial because examples that accompany it include claiming that the existence of a state of Israel is a racist endeavor. The government has reconfirmed its adoption of this definition, so the controversy over it arising from the Siegel plan has become something of a diversion from more practical issues. To sum up, the central flaw of the Siegel document is that it lacks nuance. Some of its recommendations go beyond what is feasible or desirable. Treasurer Jim Chalmers, fielding a question on Monday about the advance donation, described the plan as presenting suggestions, ideas and proposals. Burke, reiterating the position of Albanese, said on Monday night there was a whole lot of the plan where you hope that you can find pathways to avoid antisemitism where some of the recommendations never need to be considered. One risk is that the plan's overreach could be counterproductive. It could trigger a counter-reaction from other groups that inhibits proper recognition of the extent of the problem of antisemitism. Its weaknesses make the plan a missed opportunity.
Gillian Siegel, welcome to 7:30.
Thank you, Sarah.
A money app that lets you design your own real metal card. That is awesome.
Sarah, I want to start with how you frame this report. Why do you insist that the government and its institutions use a definition of anti-Semitism that's been widely criticised, including by its author, who says it's being used as a blunt instrument to suppress pro-Palestinian speech.
Suppress pro-Palestinian protest. Depressed. Saying the wrong words.
Well, I don't accept that. And obviously, the author was part of a team of authors, wasn't the sole author. But it's been the internationally accepted definition of anti-Semitism for many years. And it's the definition of anti-Semitism that the government accepted. The Australian government, previous government, and this government went in opposition. So it is the official definition of anti-Semitism. And I think it represents a fair attempt to describe what we are seeing. Hatred of the Jewish community, hatred of Jews, and the weaponizing of various issues in relation to Israel. Now, Israel is the homeland of the Jewish people, and criticising Israel is absolutely acceptable, but calling...
Are we hating the Israelis and the Palestinian men with masks, bad people?
For its destruction is not. So although many people feel that is offensive, that Israel should not exist, the international definition says that is anti-Semitic.
Of course, there are plenty of organisations around the world using the alternative Jerusalem Declaration, but let's move on to some of the things that you talk about in the report. You say you want to have a role monitoring the ABC and holding the ABC and other another public broadcaster, SBS, to account on, quote, avoiding false or distorted narratives. What false or distorted narratives do you have in mind?
I don't have anything in particular in mind.
Well, let me just stop you there, Gillian. You must have something in mind to have asserted that you want a role monitoring something.
No, I think that's not true. I think the plan is an ambitious plan to tackle all the important elements of our society where there can be the issues of anti-Semitism that need to be pushed to the margins. Now, ABC and SBS are very important elements in our society, public broadcasters that many people watch and that are seen as important and trusted sources of news. And I think that they are important elements of communication that need to be looked at and encouraged to look at multiple sources of truth rather than one particular view.
Yeah, but let's just stay with this. I'm not looking on it as an attack. I want to understand what it is you have in mind. These are your words. You want those public broadcasters to avoid false or distorted narratives. You must have had something in mind when you wrote those words.
Well, I mean, obviously, there have been lots of complaints that have been made to the ABC about particular programs or particular issues where they've only shown one side, let's say, of the debate in the Middle East and not the other side of the debate. And that's the general framing. But I don't have a particular thing in mind. My plan, and it is mine, is to look at all the dimensions, as I've said. We have to look at education. We have to look at universities. We have to look at public broadcasters. We have to look at online. And we have to look at all these vectors which are determinants of the culture of the country and reinforce them for social cohesion and take away the elements that are driving hatred and anti-Semitism. Now, there are some that are already
let me just jump in there because let me just jump in there on this topic because you referred there to complaints. So there are some what you might call false or distorted narratives that you have in mind. Can you just give us an illustration to enable us to understand what exactly it is you're driving at?
No, I mean, I think Sarah, the point of my discussion tonight is to try and give you a holistic view of the plan. I will be talking to ABC and SBS, in great detail about any things that are of concern to me down the track. This is a plan of where we need to go together in a cooperative way to try and say, look, what can we do to build cohesion? What can we do to push anti-Semitism to the margins of society? What can we do to not drive hatred? And I would have thought
I
that
just
the
want to
ABC
come in
and
there.
SBS are going to be important.
Indeed, I understand that, but you're asking for specific powers. You're asking for a role in monitoring the public broadcaster.
You're asking for powers.
You're asking for a role in monitoring the output of the ABC and SBS. So I think it's a reasonable question to ask you, what are the things you'll be looking for rather than motherhood statements about cohesion? What are these narratives that you are targeting?
No, I will be looking for balance. I mean, I think people look to the ABC and SBS as public broadcasters, as places where they will get a multiplicity of views, a truthful rendition of what the issues are. And I'll be looking for that, for Jewish voices, Israeli voices, Palestinian voices, a whole range of other voices in relation to any issue. And that's what I'm looking for.
Let me just go on to another point. This is about universities. I'm trying to cover a bit of ground here. So you want the power to work with government to cancel grants to universities that allow hate speech. We already have hate speech laws in Australia. Why do you need additional powers?
Well, they're not powers to me, okay? I'm just talking about the what exercise of powers government could give. I'm not trying to increase my powers.
Well,
I'm
you say you want the power. I'm quoting you, to work with governments to cancel grants to universities that allow hate speech.
No, I'm saying I will work with governments and they will do those things. Let's focus on the dog, not the tail, okay? You're trying to make the tail wag the dog. The most important thing is that universities cooperate in a whole of sector initiative, which they are doing. I'm not saying they're not doing it. They are doing to improve their policies, to understand what is going to make their campuses safe for all students, but including Jewish students, what is going to be a methodology for dealing with complaints that are satisfactory, so that we can drive unnecessary hate out of the system. And they are very positive about doing this, okay? And all it says is that that's what we will work on together. But if universities do not do that, then we also have to look at using funding. And that's a government issue. But I also say, and I think this is a very important aspect that many people have communicated to me, that they do not want their own money that comes to the government from their taxes being used to fund hate.
But just to understand this, do you think that there are cultural events in Australia that should be cancelled for featuring the views of people who hold very strong views about the actions of the State of Israel and the future of the State of Palestine?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm not talking about anything being cancelled, and I'm not talking about ring fencing any discussions, respectful discussions about Israel. I think if you look at IRA, it says don't hold Israel to different standards to other countries. But that's where we need to go in our country, I think, is to have informed, respectful debate, allow all those views to be ventilated, but not to then spill over into hate and have that hate directed at Jewish Australians.
I think on that point, Julian Siegel, we can all agree. I have to wrap it up, but thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for agreeing to that.
Somehow holds on to it, Lachlan Scott. It's Ben Geisen. Johnson takes a tumble, but staying with Madden, the advantage with the Wolves. Calling for Geisen.
Get a massive 120 gigs for just $35.
See a foul given against him.
police by Australia's oldest university after tweeting Zionists should be executed. The University of Sydney's Farhad Ali posted last week, F sanctions, I want Zionists executed like we executed Nazis. When that post was marked by X's violent speech, Ali...
Towards Scott.
Wow.
Olsen.
Got the football on. Wow. What we're gonna do? What we have to do? Gotta do something about it. Make something out of it. The man with the mask. They're going to say something like, the Israel is in the Bible. Israel's in the Bible. Is Israel in the Bible? Or the Jews in the Bible? What are we going to do? Go to the courts and system? Man, we're not intelligent enough for this shit. I don't know. Whoa, fuck you, man. Dun, 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 dun. One more, that's it. What's this? Oh, that's Sif's already.
A money app that lets you design your own real metal card. That is awesome.
Clapton, who recently gave an interview in which he said about you, I love Roger, I love him, we are brothers, and he goes his way about it, and it takes a lot of guts, and he suffers from it terribly. I've seen him sit on the window ledge in tears and say, it's morning here in Manhattan, and I'm in...
Another challenge.
Oh, cut out. Did it? What did it do?
Into the channel for Harry McCarthy, who's one-on-one with Bunal.
Whoa.
The ball forward.
This guy.
My father died when I was not even one, so I can perhaps understand a little of a sort of complex feeling of not knowing somebody in that position. But secondly, whether your views of military action, of warfare, were remotely dictated to by your father's...
Yeah, my father died too. I was going to stop it. Well, my father died too. Before, yeah.
Own positions and shifting positions.
Well, we're all product of our part. He wasn't ever a territorial, by the way.
Oh, he was...
He joined the Royal Fusiliers.
Right.
So he went back to the conscription board after he changed his mind, because he was a conscientious objector in 1939 when he was called up, because of the Sixth Commandment, which is "Thou shalt not kill," as you know.
So he was a very Christian man, wasn't he, your dad?
He was very Christian, yeah, and so when he went back, it was it's an act of heroism, in my view, and so it's something that has coloured my whole life to know that that's what my father did. So he believed that the Nazis had to be fought, and that his...
But you can't make it so Australia has to go and stop it or save it or anything like that. You cannot go with the army over there or something. Only NATO and UN and all that. I don't know how they're going to plan it. This football's on, bro. Yeah. How do we handshake the Lama or stop the bombing in Palestine, in Syria?
Politics, because by that time he'd become a member of the Communist Party, that his politics trumped his Christianity, and so he had to go and do his duty. But you're right about February the 18th.
Lovely feet and good fall to Scott. Janovich clears it away. Tense moments at the back for Manly. Is Olsen on the ball, flick through for Scott, and Flynn Madden will pick it up. One more for Olsen. And then they can return fire.
شباب قصف بسرعة بسرعة يا شباب يا شباب خذونا على اللايف شباب في عندنا قصف شباب قصف يا شباب خذونا على الهواء شباب قصف بسرعة بسرعة يا شباب
Israel strikes Syria's military headquarters and area near Presidential Palace in third day of attacks, ABC News. Israel says it has launched airstrikes on the entrance of the Syrian military headquarters and near the Presidential Palace in the capital, Damascus. Syrian state media reported loud explosions in the city, and later said at least one person was killed and 18 injured in Israeli strikes. It is the third day in a row that Israel has launched strikes on Syrian government forces, with strikes during the past few days targeting forces heading towards the southern city of Swaida. Sectarian violence had erupted there between local Bedouin clans and militia from the Druze community. The Israeli government says it is protecting the Druze population, a religious minority living in the south of Syria with ties to the Druze community in Israel. The new Syrian regime, led by former militant leader Ahmed al-Shara, had condemned Israel's behavior, describing it as a calculated attempt to fuel chaos across Syria. Israel's military has operated inside Syria since the fall of dictator Bashar al-Assad late last year, with troops and tanks crossing over the border from the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights into southern Syria hours after the previous regime was toppled by rebel forces. There had been speculation in recent weeks that Mr. al-Shara could strike some sort of peace deal with the Israeli government, normalizing ties between the two countries. Let the IDF operate, Netanyahu says. On Wednesday, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio repeated American pleas for restraint, telling a press conference the U.S. was talking to all relevant sides about bringing an end to the fighting. He said he was very worried about escalating violence in southern Syria. It is a direct threat to efforts to help build a peaceful and stable Syria, he said. We have been and remain in repeated and constant talks with the governments of Syria and Israel on this matter. Israeli, but left the stand as the situation developed. In a video statement, Mr. Netanyahu urged Israeli Druze not to cross the border. You are risking your lives, you can be murdered, you can be kidnapped, and you are harming the efforts of the IDF, he said. Therefore, I ask you, return to your homes, let the IDF operate. The IDF announced it would reinforce its forces along the border with Syria through the occupied Golan Heights. The IDF will continue to operate, both in defense and offense, to ensure the security of Israeli civilians, the IDF said in a statement. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemned Israel's airstrikes on Wednesday. The Secretary General further condemns Israel's escalatory airstrikes on Suwaida, Daraa and in the center of Damascus, as well as reports of the IDF's redeployment of forces in the Golan. Mr. Guterres' spokesman, Stefan Dujarric, said in a statement. Turkey describes attacks as act of sabotage along the so-called shouting fence in the Druze town of Meidel Shams, in the very north of the Golan Heights. Crowds had gathered along the Israeli border waving the Druze flag. Live scenes from the area showed people trying to push the razor wire-topped fence over, and some managing to cross into the Syrian buffer zone on the other side. By doing so, it appeared the Israeli Druze running across the border were trying to force Israel to intervene further in the Syrian conflict. But regional neighbors have appeared less supportive of Israel's actions. On Wednesday, the Turkish Foreign Ministry said Israel's strikes would play a destabilizing role in Syria's future. Israel's attacks on Damascus, following its military interventions in the south of Syria, constitute an act of sabotage against Syria's efforts to secure peace, stability, and security, the ministry said in a statement. Israel seized the territory from Syria during the Six-Day War in 1967, then annexed it in 1981. Much of the international community does not recognize Israel's claim to the land, with countries including Australia noting Israel's occupation and effective control of the area. The United States does recognize Israel's sovereignty there, in a move announced by U.S. President Donald Trump during his first term in office.
يا شباب خذونا على اللايف
Alright. Yeah, you heard it. They're bombing Syria now. Some town is going over the border or something. Something's going on. Get that some name of the town of the people are growing over, and so they have conflicts over there. the name of the community, the name of the religion, the name of the politics, the name of the culture, and everything. And they believe on that, and they create wars with that. Wars, man. Yay, bro.
Why is Israel bombing Syria and who are the Druze? At least 15 people died after Israel targeted Syria's military HQ and defense ministry, amid clashes in the Druze-majority Swaida region. Why did this new conflict start and how will it end? Technically at war with Syria for decades, Israel has said it would not accept the presence of forces of the Islamist-led government in the country's south, which borders the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. At the same time, Israel claims to protect the Druze, a minority religious group with long-established ties to Israel. The Israeli military began its strikes as Syrian government forces deployed to the heartland of the Druze minority in the southern province of Swaida, following deadly clashes between Druze fighters and Bedouin tribes. It went on to bomb the headquarters of Syria's military in Damascus, killing at least 15 people. So far, more than 300 people have been killed in the clashes since Sunday, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights estimates. Loading embed. How did it begin? Clashes began on Sunday between Druze religious minority factions and Bedouin tribes, who are Sunni Muslim, killing more than 100 people. The two sides have a long-standing feud in Swaida. Government forces sent reinforcements to the region, in the country's south, saying they want to re-establish security. But according to witnesses, Druze armed groups and the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights monitor. Government forces and allied groups including Bedouin took control on Monday of several villages near Swaida previously run by Druze fighters. On Tuesday, following contacts between Damascus authorities and notables from Swaida, the Syrian Defense Ministry announced a ceasefire after government forces had entered the city. Before then, Swaida, home to about 150,000 people, was controlled by various Druze factions. Syria's three main Druze spiritual leaders, who sometimes differ on political issues, called on local fighters on Tuesday to lay down their arms. However, Hikmat al-Hijri, one of the leaders, then accused Damascus of failing to uphold its commitment to enter Swaida peacefully, and called for resisting this brutal campaign by all available means. Terrified Swaida residents have reported numerous abuses since the entry of government troops and their allies, including executions, looting and burning houses. A future for the Druze. The new Islamist authorities, who seized power after overthrowing Bashar al-Assad in December, had demanded the dissolution of all armed groups and their integration into the forces of the defense ministry. During Syria's 14-year civil war, which started after Assad's violent repression of peaceful protests in 2011, the Druze formed their own armed groups to protect their heartland in Swaida away from major battles. In January, the two largest groups, the Men of Dignity Movement and the Mountain Brigade, said they were ready to join the new national army. The state has been stalling the implementation of this agreement, Men of Dignity spokesman Bassem Far said. Aside from the Druze, the Kurds, who control vast territories in the northeast, boast a powerful armed wing, the Syrian Democratic Forces, and are negotiating with Damascus for their integration into the armed forces. Before the war, the Druze in Syria numbered about 700,000, or 3% of the population. The Druze are followers of an esoteric religion that split from Shiite Islam, and are mainly found in Syria, Lebanon and Israel. Why is Israel involved? Since the fall of Assad, Israel expanded its overture to Syria's Druze through notable Israeli co-religionists. It sent humanitarian parcels and allowed delegations of religious dignitaries to go to Israel on pilgrimage, despite an official state of war with Syria. In March, Israel expressed its intention to defend the Druze following skirmishes in the suburbs of Damascus. But these remarks were immediately rejected by Druze dignitaries, who reaffirmed their commitment to the unity of Syria. Israel struck Syrian military targets as well as central Damascus on Wednesday, July 16, as it continued its campaign to protect Druze minority communities in southern Syria. Sean Hogan has more. Israel has bombed several Syrian military positions in Swaida since Monday. On Wednesday, Israel said it struck the headquarters of the Syrian army in Damascus, a compound that also houses the defense ministry. Syrian state television reported further Israeli strikes on the army headquarters compound, where a wing of the four-story building was destroyed. The health ministry said at least 15 people died in the strikes. The official Syrian news agency Sana also announced an Israeli drone strike on the predominantly Druze city of Swaida, home to the country's largest Druze community. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz on Wednesday demanded that Syrian forces withdraw from the south. He promised that troops would operate forcefully in Swaida to eliminate the forces that attack the Druze until their full withdrawal. Mr. Katz and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Tuesday said they are acting to prevent the Syrian regime from harming them and to ensure the demilitarization of the area adjacent to our border with Syria. What is Israel's relationship with the new Syrian government? Not good. After Ahmed al-Shaara's new government took power, Israel lobbied to keep the group designated as terrorists. However, U.S. President Donald Trump has lifted the terrorist label, dropped sanctions and welcomed Damascus to the international fold in a move that has not gone down well in Jerusalem. On Wednesday, two Israeli ministers called on the Israel Defense Forces to eliminate Mr. Shaara We must not stand idly by in the face of the Islamist Nazi terror regime of Al-Qaeda in a suit and tie, said Amichai Chikli, Israel's Minister of Diaspora Affairs. Anyone who thinks Ahmad al-Shara is a legitimate leader is gravely mistaken. He is a terrorist. A barbaric murderer who should be eliminated without delay, he said. What happens next? Who knows? Damascus has said it is withdrawing forces from Swaida, but Israel is reported to be continuing strikes. Mr. Trump, who has said he wants to give Mr. Shara in Syria a chance to succeed, is reported to be angry that Israel has attacked Syria. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says he's very concerned, although he has expressed hopes that a ceasefire may hold. AFP. Subscribe to the Australian newspaper home delivery website, iPad, iPhone and Android app. U.S. announces truce as new clashes rock Drew's heartland. A U.S. spokesman said the deal was backed by Turkey, a key supporter of interim Syrian leader Ahmed al-Shara, as well as neighboring Jordan. Subscribe for award-winning journalism. U.S. announces truce as new clashes rock Drew's heartland. A U.S. spokesman said the deal was backed by Turkey, a key supporter of interim Syrian leader Ahmed al-Shara, as well as neighboring Jordan. Digital $4 for the first 4 weeks. Conditions apply. Asterisk. Digital.
Right, bro.
Goes for an early cross towards Scott. Brings it down nicely. Mashiavecchio finds Olsen. Olsen still has it. Madden. You say might fall the way of Beatty. A block shot from Driscoll.
What's this one about?
Great currency exchange rates, plus discounted airport lounge passes, travel insurance.
Video.
You are my whole wide world. You'll never know how much I love you. When
Machinery and Chemical Industries Incorporated, MKE, has completed a significant milestone in the development of national defense equipment by successfully delivering the 5th Denizen 76.62mm naval gun system to the Turkish Naval Command. This artillery system is the result of efforts to nationalize naval weapons technology, which previously relied on imports, primarily from Italy and other Western countries.
Why are we arming up Turkey? Why are we arming them up? Yeah, why are we making them stronger? Don't you think it's time to get it out and who's stronger? Iraq or Iran or fuck you, motherfucker?
The development of the Denizen 76.62mm gun system is part of Turkey's broader strategy to reduce its dependence on foreign countries for major weapons systems, particularly for warships and maritime platforms. The gun was designed, developed, and manufactured locally by MKE with the support of various domestic defense companies and national research institutions. With the completion of this 5th delivery, MKE demonstrates its capability not only in designing, but also in ensuring the serial production of advanced sea-based weapon systems. The Denizen 76.62mm gun system boasts advanced features such as rapid fire capability, high accuracy, a range of approximately 16 kilometers with standard ammunition, and can be used in a variety of weather conditions and combat environments. This gun has been designed to counter various types of threats, including air and surface attacks, as well as asymmetric threats from fast-maneuvering small vessels. In previous trials, This gun demonstrated exceptional performance in terms of rate of fire and precision, successfully destroying targets with a high degree of accuracy. National warships, such as the ADA-class corvettes and Istanbul-class frigates, are planned to be equipped with this Denizen artillery system. With this gun, Turkey significantly strengthens its Navy's combat capabilities while maintaining its self-sufficiency in the defense industry. One of the advantages of the Denizen 76.62 millimeters is its use of a modern fire control system and its integration with the ship's overall combat system. This gun is also capable of using various types of ammunition, including smart projectiles that can be programmed for various missions. The development project for this gun began several years ago in response to various embargoes and export restrictions from arms-producing countries. After undergoing several stages of testing, including sea trials and live fire tests, the Denizen was declared fit for use in a real operational environment. Minki's success in developing this system also demonstrates Turkey's technological maturity in the naval weapons sector. In conjunction with this fifth delivery, MKE is also preparing for the next production batch to meet domestic demand and potential exports. Several friendly countries have expressed interest in this system, particularly those seeking to upgrade their naval artillery systems with competitive and reliable domestically produced products. The Turkish government, through the Ministry of National Defense and the Presidency of Defense Industries, continues to provide full support to national projects like the Denizen. Developed entirely with domestic and national resources, the Denizen 76 not only enhances the Turkish Navy's firepower, but also strengthens the competitiveness of the Turkish defense industry in the global market. This success also strengthens Turkey's position among countries capable of producing naval artillery systems independently. Beyond its technical aspects, this gun is also designed to be easy to maintain and compatible with modern naval operational doctrine. Turkey is now not only an end user of defense technology, but also a developer and exporter of advanced weapon systems. The Turkish Naval Command welcomed this fifth delivery and stated that the system will soon be integrated into the ships being commissioned. The MKE stated in a statement that the development of the Denizen reflects the nation's determination and ability to achieve self-reliance in defense. With this step, Turkey further strengthens its position as a major player in the global defense industry, particularly in the maritime sector. Further development of the Denizen system is also planned in the near future, including a lighter version for small vessels and a modular version for export. The gun is also compatible with naval drone systems and integrates with radar and electro-optical systems for automated missions. With the entry of this system into the Turkish Navy's inventory, a new chapter has opened in the history of national maritime defense. The delivery of these 5 Denizen guns is a tangible symbol of the success of the Turkish defense industry and the achievement of self-reliance in strategic weapon systems. Naval guns are a key element of a maritime weapons system, playing a vital role in ensuring naval dominance. In the context of modern warfare, shipboard guns function not only as conventional combat tools, but also as part of an integrated weapons system. The sophistication of modern guns lies in their ability to fire with high precision in a short time, even against fast-moving targets. One of their main advantages is making them a versatile weapon in naval warfare. The delivery of these 5
Alright, anyway. Turkey is doing their own thing. Whoa, 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 whoa. Enemy sector. Ciao.